you know what? Another thing I threw out, I wasn't going to bring this up, but I might as well. What are the cliches, the absolute worst Gaelic games cliches currently in circulation? I love people to get their comments in here, and I'll see what yours is. But a few of them coming in here. Eleanor Burke says pressing up on the kick out. So obviously this is both codes here. He's flying and training, says Declan Clancy. They were very defensive, says Michael McMullen. And he clarifies, the way the game has gone now, teams drop back when they don't have the ball and push forward when they do. Some are just better at it, and some have a link player at 11, an outlet for a kick out. That makes all the difference. Hunger is mentioned. Heel of the hunt. I think Blaman is ribbing me a little bit there because I tend to say it an awful lot. You have to win the middle third, says Dave Kenny. Yeah, I suppose, says Alan. People do say that a lot. And look at, and sure look at, that's a soft free. Yeah, there's Ed Moynihan with look at culture. He's not that type of player. Does that particularly stand out for you, Kevin?
The one, I know you'll agree with this now, but the one that I really get annoyed by is when you hear the sort of rugby jargon coming into GA. You hear guys in interviews talking about work-ons and learnings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then, like, I don't know, I think it's probably something that I do myself, but when you're referring to guys like a quarterback or a point guard, I think that does annoy people as well, because you're like, why are you bringing up a different sport to explain this guy's position when it's completely different what he does? But then I seen someone replying there, Risty Hurd. I actually think that's a great one. Like, I love that description of the player. Like, there's some that some people might get annoyed by, but I just think they're great. And there's one, I was just thinking about cliches in the GA, and there's one that I think is kind of lost in recent years that I always liked was the pen picks in programs, particularly in club programs. I just don't think it happens as much. And I used to always look into games, and you get to see what a guy's occupation is and what medals he won, and what his favorite movie was, generally Shawshank Redemption. But like I always really enjoyed that one. I thought it was you kind of get to know a guy a little bit more. So maybe that's one that we should bring back.
Yeah, I'd like to see a bit of that. All right, yeah, definitely in Dublin in recent years. I remember a few of the county finals we had to fill them out. But yeah, I agree with you on that point. What else has been said? Showed great heart through the lines. Do you know what's another one coming in now? I saw Jim McGuinness talking about it. Maybe this is the influence of soccer on him. He talked about a defensive low block. And I'm fairly terrified that we're going to be talking about low blocks pretty soon. Nobody knows what it is, of course, but I think we're going to be talking about a low block soon.
Yeah, and there's one actually you often hear when sort of a long-serving player retires, people go, "Oh, he owes the county nothing," and I just don't get that. Like, what, does someone owe the county something then when he's 20 years old and hasn't done it? You know, it just kind of annoys me as well.
And what about the idea that a manager, he's earned the right to walk away whenever he wants?
Yeah, that's another one. Like, it's kind of that's also, you hear that a lot with Cody now, that he earns the right to choose, and it's kind of hard to argue against that, you know. But then again, you look at someone like Mickey Hart, and that was something that people would have used a lot with him. And then you have the bounce of the first managers coming in, so you can kind of frame these things to sort of to lend to any argument that you're making. Like, there's actually another one. I think Kieran Cunningham's often saying it on Twitter. Highly rated S&C coaches. You'll never see an article about a GA coach, an S&C coach coming into a GA setup. It's always highly rated S&C coach.
Yeah, well, he must be terrible if he isn't highly rated, because, I agree with you on that one. Another good one here, actually, Michael Ryan, he goes, putting S after individual players, like, for example, when talking about Limerick and saying, the Keane Lynches, the Declan Hannons, the Sean Finnans, and referring to some aspect of play. But then, we could be talking about, the Tipperaries, the Corks, the Galways of this world. That's another one, too.
Yeah, and you find then, you probably see this when you're doing interviews with players or coaches, and they're saying that and you're typing that out, and it just doesn't look right when you're putting it down on paper as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely not. And some awful managerial buzzword slogans: control the controllables, push up, hunger, no fouls. But I actually think a lot of the time managers say this stuff to make it feel in their head that they have a checklist to go through, and we've that much sorted anyway, and we've that much boxed off, and it just allows them to operate with more clarity in their own head. Whether it actually amounts to anything, at times I don't know, but like, the less you leave to chance, I suppose, in their heads, that's probably why they do it.
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, people from the outside sort of don't realise that the managers, if they're saying stuff like this, it's generally for a reason, and sometimes you can overload players with information, whereas if you just have a few key points, stuff like that, control the controllables, like, it means that you're not worrying about refereeing decisions or the weather or anything like that. You're just focusing on what you can do in the game. Like, I know when Conor Myler recently sort of came out that he had sweat and courage written on his wristband, this season, and particularly in the All-Ireland final, when he gave interviews afterwards, and some people were kind of laughing at that, saying, do you really need to look at something written on your wrist to get you going? But I think some players, like, you could be like a visual learner. It might just be that split second in the game, and you're talking about the 1%ers here. You're not really talking about, this isn't something that if you're an average player, it's going to make all the difference. But if you're looking for the 1% to get you over the line, sometimes stuff like this can work. So I think it is, some players do benefit from it.
Yeah, a lovely one here. People are writing us off. Yeah, people
Yeah.
were writing us off all year. Remember when Kilkenny were winning All Ireland after All Ireland, and at the end of the year, one of their players would come out and say, "Look, we were wrote off there all year," and we're like, you know, in the media, you're there going, everyone tipped you to win every single game, and sometimes by 15 points. So I don't know what sort of mental gymnastics you're doing in the dressing room to think that anyone was writing you off, but that is definitely a good one. So is take your points and the goals will come. Massive fan of going for the onion bag every time. Like, I would say about that, right? You know, the way at times you hear took the sensible option, especially in Gaelic football when you fisted over the bar. If the goal is on, the sensible option is to go for the goal and make sure. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, no, it is definitely. I think hand passing over the bar, certainly in football, like it's come under a lot of criticism. But sometimes it is. If you're running in on the end line, it's the right thing. But I agree with you. Like, nothing sickens me more when you see a guy coming in and there is a goal on and he just hand passes over the bar to get his score on the mark. So it's yeah, that's a good one as well.
Yeah. Especially if like they go on to lose by a point, it doesn't look so sensible now. 25 minutes later, you should have taken the goal on. But anyway, we won't focus too much more on that. But there's loads of those great old disastrous cliches been talked about. Keep the comments coming in. If you enjoyed this piece of content, please follow us on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of the page, which helps the channel grow. And if you want audio podcasts, go to patreon.com/OurGame.